The Song of Ice and Fire in the Game of Thrones is the telling of the story of the hero's journey. We see that reflected through the different lenses of our many point of view characters. This is part of what makes the story so interesting, that myth and through prophecy that are being foreshadowed in the books and the show. In this video, I want to ask the important questions of how Arthur Dayne's sword Dawn is linked to Jon Snow and Azor Ahai. This video today is sponsored by Karen Richmond on the Azor Ahai Patreon. One of the great myths of the known world is the prophecy of Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised an ancient warrior who once saved the world from darkness. Azor Ahai is a legendary figure in the faith of R'hllor, the Lord of Light. Thousands of years ago, he forged the sword Lightbringer, which he used to defeat the darkness of the Great Other. This came at a price, however, as in order to unleash the sword's true power, he had to plunge it into the heart of his loving wife, Nissa. The prophecy foretells that he will be reborn as the prince that was promised. Azor Ahai will be born again after the long summer when the stars bleed and the cold breath of darkness falls heavy on the world. And as we know it, a 10-year summer has just ended in Westeros, and winter is here. Melisandre, the character who first introduces us to this prophecy, has certainly been wrong before, as we see her first choice Stannis Baratheon is dead in the show. But she now believes Jon Snow is the prince that was promised, and maybe this time she is right. When the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amidst smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone. This passage seems to point directly to Daenerys Targaryen as Azor Ahai, since she was reborn at the end of Season 1 in the pyre of Khal Drogo smoke while Mirri Maz Duur cried for her life. Salt. 3 dragons emerged from the stone eggs and the red comet appeared in the sky right after. Dany even calls it the bleeding star in the books. But we have to remember that the prophecy mentions a prince and not a princess. While Daenerys Targaryen is a great candidate to be Azor Ahai or even Lightbringer, Jon Snow, who is now confirmed to be Aegon Targaryen, the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark, has Stark ice and Targaryen fire blood running through his veins. He is literally the Song of Ice and Fire. There are many reasons why we can point to Jon as being a good candidate, but for me the moment it was confirmed was when we got the flashback to the Tower of Joy through Bran's perspective in the finale of Season 6, The Winds of Winter.
Ned?
Lyanna.
Is that you? Is that really you? You're not a dream.
We got to learn the truth about Jon Snow's birth. He was born amid smoke and salt. While I was doing my own research, I decided to study the sacred symbolism of smoke within our own human culture, since George's writing is influenced by human myth and religion. It's curious because Jon has been willing to sacrifice himself for the people, but as we see, he was murdered by some people that labeled him a traitor on what looked to be a cross. And smoke is used in Christianity in association with the Lord or God, and the church also uses it to signal the election of a new pope. But what's even more interesting was the use of smoke in Aboriginal rituals. A woman giving birth would crouch over a fire and hold her baby in the smoke from the fire to seal his spirit into his mortal body. So in my personal opinion, my interpretation of these words are that Lyanna's death, which brought salt tears, and Ned's promise to protect Jon are the smoke part of the prophecy. After killing Arthur Dayne with the help of Howland Reed, Ned Stark runs up the tower steps to find Lyanna, but he carries Dawn with him as well. Once he's inside the tower, he resets the sword at the foot of Lyanna's bed and goes to her. The camera focuses right on the sword and the bloody bed. Focusing on Dawn like that can't be an accident. The show's foreshadowing is much different than the books because it's visual, but what if Dawn represents the Red Star? The sword is nothing like the weapon described in the books, but it does have a rising sun painted on the hilt, making it the Sword of the Morning. So my question is, could this make Dawn Lightbringer? Dawn was supposedly forged from a fallen star thousands of years ago and is now covered in the blood of Sir Arthur Dayne. It sure sounds like a red star to me. And part of the genius that is George R.R. Martin is the way that things happen in threes. Perhaps the meteorite's death and the birth into the sword is the very first step. and the death of the actual Sword of the Morning, Arthur Dayne, is the second step. The fact that Jon is able to wield it perhaps is the third step, and after all, both Arthur Dayne and Ned protected Jon Snow, who is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. But there is also another alternate way to look at this, and that is that Azor Ahai was Rhaegar Targaryen, and that Lyanna Stark was Nyssa, making Jon Snow Lightbringer. The usual thing with myths and legends is that they appear to have some basis on facts, but whoever wrote the story down in the first place gave it some sort of embellishment. In Game of Thrones, there's always a story within a story. There were 3 attempts to create the sword according to the legend. He labored for 30 days and 30 nights until it was done. However, when he went to temper it in water, the sword broke. The second time he took 50 days and 50 nights to make the sword, even better than the first. To temper it this time, he captured a lion and drove the sword into its heart, but once more the steel shattered. The third time with a heavy heart, for he knew beforehand what he must do to finish the blade. He worked for 100 days and 100 nights until it was finished. This time he called for his wife Nyssa and asked for her to bear her breast. He drove the sword into her breast, her soul combining with the steel of the sword, creating Lightbringer. So perhaps these are the 3 attempts. Aemon said that Rhaegar thought he was the prince that was promised and he died at the trident. He went to temper it in water and the sword broke. Later, he started to think his son Aegon is the one, but Aegon was murdered under Tywin's order, who wanted revenge on Aerys, the Lionheart. And after Azor Ahai Rhaegar pierced Nyssa Lyanna with his sword, the true Lightbringer was created. It killed Lyanna, but her blood, her soul, and her strength went into the steel, into Lightbringer, Lyanna's son Jon Snow. He is the prince that was promised, and his song is the Song of Ice and Fire, making Azor Ahai Lightbringer's father. This all relates back to the words of the Night's Watch and to the Sword of the Morning. Ned was willing to let Jon go off to the Night's Watch to defend the realms of men, and Arthur Dayne was willing to die protecting the son of the true-born heir to the Iron Throne. This makes Jon Snow extremely important in not only the fight against the White Walkers, but also what happens in the succession of the Iron Throne. It could take something not of this world to end the Great Other, he who brings the darkness, the Night King. It will be interesting to see if Dawn will have an impact in the show, because in the books In A Feast for Crows, we discover that House Dayne may have been wielding the sword for 10,000 years, which means it would have predated the Long Night and have been used at that time. Dawn is said to be as pale as milk glass and as strong as sharp as Valyrian steel, before Valyrian steel would have existed. That would have been one really special sword at the time. We also find out in the prologue of A Game of Thrones that the others have flesh as pale as milk, and their eyes as bright as blue stars. So there we have a description of stars combined with a description of pale as milk. So it's possible that Dawn is the kryptonite equivalent for the White Walkers, and I believe that Jon Snow, who is the next Sword of the Morning, the Lightbringer, may wield Dawn to kill the Night King, stabbing him in the heart, breaking the curse, and the dragon glass that turned him into the King of Winter. George R. R. Martin did tell us that Dawn is safely at Starfall, waiting for another Sword of the Morning to rise. In tomorrow's video, we will be diving into the myth of the last hero, and we're going to tie it together with this video from today. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thank you to all of the amazing people who support this channel on Patreon. If you do want to see your favorite theories and get early access to videos like this, make sure you check out Patreon. We are currently at 91 strong, and we are only 9 away from the goal of 100. I really appreciate everyone that has donated to the GoFundMe to help me get to Con of Thrones 2018. I'm really excited to go, and I'm going to be getting some awesome footage in Dallas for all of you Throners. Don't forget to like this video, and if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'll see you all in the next video. Hype and love.